This is a video for my UK friends. If you are from the UK and looking for a new PC build, I'm going to show you 3 different PCs for 3 different budgets, and all of them are going to be excellent for gaming. I will also show you the average FPS for you to see how these are going to perform. So even if you're a beginner, you are able to understand me. You will have the links to all of these PCs with bonus systems for different budgets down below in the video description. That being said, let's start. For the budget of £1,000, you will have 2 options. And if you have less than this, as I mentioned before, you will have bonus systems in the description for less than £1,000, so don't worry about it. The first option is the more expensive system, the one that's £1,050. This one has the Ryzen 5 7600 with the RX 7800 XT for the GPU. In my opinion, this system is much better because you're going to get a PC that's more future-proof. So down the line, if you want to upgrade the CPU, you will not have to upgrade the motherboard if you are on the same AM5 platform. The other system that's £1,000 has the Ryzen 7 5700X instead of the Ryzen 5 7600, and in terms of gaming performance, both PCs are going to be really similar, but here you are on the AM4 platform, so if down the line you decide to upgrade to a newer CPU, then you will most likely have to upgrade the motherboard as well. In terms of gaming performance, both are going to be excellent for 1440p resolution with an average of 108 FPS on a 15 game average at 1440p on high to ultra settings, and then on that same test at 1080p it was able to average 147 FPS and 62 FPS on average at 4K resolution on the same 15 game average. Another GPU that's worth considering is the RTX 4070 if you want an Nvidia GPU or you really value ray tracing. For the rest of the components, for the £1,000 build, you get the Vitro B5 for the CPU cooler to cool down the Ryzen 7, then you get the B550M Pro 4 motherboard, which is really good for the price. It has all the features that you will need. You get 32 gigs of DDR4 memory, so really good not only for gaming but also for streaming and content creation. Then you get a 1TB Gen 4 SSD, which is going to be enough, and if you need more storage down the line, you can upgrade since you have more M.2 slots in your motherboard. Then for the case, we have the Techwear Forge M Micro ATX Mini Tower case. Honestly, for £45 you get 4 pre-installed fans. It looks amazing and the airflow is going to be great as well. And then for the power supply, we have the MSI Mag 650 watt 80 plus power supply, which has enough wattage and it's a good unit. And then for the £1,050 build, most of the components are the same, but you get the Gigabyte B650M for the motherboard instead because it's a different platform. And then you get 16 gigs of RAM instead of 32, but this is DDR5 memory instead of DDR4, so it's actually faster memory. Then with the next one, we have once again 2 options depending on how much you want to spend. The first one being under £1,500, and this one has the same Ryzen 5 7600, but you get the RX 7900 XT for the GPU instead. And then with the more expensive system, for £1,540 you get the Ryzen 7 7700X instead of the Ryzen 5 7600 and the same GPU, the RX 7900 XT. Both of these PCs are going to be amazing for 1440p and also 4K resolution, but the reason why I would recommend you buying the more expensive option is if you play high demanding CPU titles. So if your favorite games require a lot of CPU usage, let's say for example CSGO, then it's actually worth the upgrade to go with the Ryzen 7 7700X. But on the other hand, if you play more GPU demanding titles, then it actually doesn't make much of a difference, especially if you're going to play at 4K resolution. If you're going to buy a 4K monitor, then going with the Ryzen 5 7600 for the CPU is going to be more than enough, and trust me, it's not going to be a bottleneck. But if you play at 1440p and more CPU demanding titles, then it's worth the upgrade. Anyway, on a 16 game average at 1440p, the RX 7900 XT was able to average 160 FPS, which is a really high number and the 4th best GPU on the market. And then at 4K, it was able to average 94 FPS, which is again a really high number for 4K resolution, considering it was a 16 game average on high to ultra settings, and once again, high demanding titles were tested. If you want an Nvidia GPU, you can consider the RTX 4070 Ti, which is going to give you around the same performance, but in my opinion the 7900 XT is the better GPU in terms of price to performance, since you get 20 gigs of VRAM and better performance at a lower price. Now for the rest of the components, on the £1,500 build, you get 2TB of Gen 4 SSD, which is plenty of storage, you get 32 gigs of DDR5 memory with really fast timings, then you get the MSI Pro B650M Wi-Fi Micro ATX motherboard, which is going to be a nice upgrade from from the last one, and then you get the ID Cooling SE224XTS CPU cooler for the Ryzen 5 7600, which is going to be way more than enough, and it's going to keep your temps down and also the noise levels down. However, you can get away with the stock AMD cooler, so if you want to save £30, feel free to go with the stock one. And last but not least, for the power supply, we have an A-tier rated, meaning that it's the best quality, 750 watt 80 plus gold power supply in the Thermaltake Tough Power GF1. And then for the more expensive option, most of the components are the same, but you get a 1TB Gen 4 SSD instead of 2TB, and then you get of course the Ryzen 7 7700X, which is better, and you get a better CPU cooler in the Thermalright Phantom Spirit 120 to cool down the Ryzen 7 7700X. And then for the £2,000 system, which is the most expensive one here, we have a 4K Ultra system. For the CPU, you will get the Ryzen 7 7800X3D, which is arguably the best CPU on the whole market. So if you play high demanding CPU titles, this is going to be amazing for you. And then for the GPU, you get the RX 7900XTX, which is the second best GPU in the whole market, right below the RTX 4090, which is much more expensive. On that same test from the RX 7900XT, the XTX version was able to average 113 FPS at 4K, right above the RTX 4080. So in terms of performance, you will have no issues when it comes to 4K resolution, even on the ultra settings. And if you want to play at 1440p, the FPS average went up to 181 FPS, which is more than you will ever need, considering the settings were on high or ultra. If you want to do gaming, I wouldn't recommend you spending anything more than this. I think for most people, this will be way more than enough, even on the highest settings at 4K resolution. Then for the rest of the components, we have the Deepcool CK560 for the case. I absolutely love how this one looks. And then for the CPU cooler, we have the Deepcool LE520. This is a 240 all-in-one liquid cooler for our Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Then for the motherboard, we have the Asus Prime X670P Wi-Fi ATX AM5 motherboard. Really good features overall and a ton of connectivity. Then we have a 2TB Gen 4 SSD again and 32 gigs of RAM, alongside a 1000 watt 80 plus gold power supply, A-tier rated by the way, so the best quality, because you will need high wattage for this type of build. And if you just want the best of the best and you are willing to spend more than £2,000, as I said at the beginning, in the description you will have cheaper systems but also more expensive ones. However, you really need the right monitor for your PC, because if you buy, for example, the £2,000 system and you have a 1080p monitor, then you are actually wasting your money. For that reason, I highly recommend you watching my video on the best gaming monitors in 2023 for all resolutions, 1080p, 1440p and 4K. You will have that one in the top right of the screen, and I do recommend you watching it if you are not sure what monitor to buy alongside these systems. Thank you guys for watching, thank you for the support, and I will see you on the next one.